Good. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to this first uh, sharing session. Didn't quite know what to call it, but basically a kind of informal way to share what we're all working on and connect face to face. Um, so thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks to Alan for offering to do this first one and talk about Duo Context Exclusion and that project. So yeah, Alan, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, hey, let me get my screen going. It's not a great user interface there, Zoom. Okay, so can everybody see my demo browser here? Is that all good? Okay, so Duo Context Exclusion is very kind of boring but crucial feature where you can use get ignore type pattern, set it on a project, and then the LLM will know not to touch any file that matches that pattern. So you see here we have a repo with a README file, and that's it. And when we go into GitLab Duo settings on the project, see we have excluded README.md from being used by the AI. So once we go into, I've got the project checked out here. I'll start a new chat. And I ask it what is in the so Duo agent's going to take over. And it tries to read the file. It's excluded. Then it says, hey, this is I can see that the file exists, but I cannot access its contents. So and then it gives you suggestions for, whatever. So that's really the heart of the feature. You can also notice if you open it here, uh, Duo code suggestions are disabled because of the contents, right? So because of the context exclusion. So that's pretty much it. The main thing here I think is really interesting about this feature is how it is implemented, because it has to touch so many different things. So um, in the Rails monolith, which is the first place. Well, first off, does anyone have any questions about what the feature does? Okay, just wanted to give. It seems pretty straightforward, but you never know. So how it's actually implemented is in the Rails monolith, there is a file exclusion service, which you can give it a series of file paths and it'll tell you if any of them are blocked. And it checks the paths using I think uh, I don't know if it uses a gem for this or not. It may not. It may just use regexes. But oh yeah, it is just good path name. That's the gem that it's using here. So it's using a gem, looking through all the files you give it to see if anything matches. And you can see it used here in review merge request. So review merge request has a concept of which files are AI reviewable, and it runs through all of those and then sees if any of them are excluded. This includes any files in a diff, by the way. So like if you've got a diff with a bunch of files in it, it's going to look through and exclude the parts of the diff that are excluded by context exclusion. And that's really all it has to do, is just using it as a filter. If code review runs into some files that it can't actually access, it's going to say, I do not have access to the following files due to an active context exclusion policy, right? it's going to post that as part of it at the beginning of its review so that you know it did not use these files. The other portion of this that's important is the agent Duo agentic tools. So right now, which is right now in the AI gateway, right here, I'm looking at the set of file system tools. So we have, read file, write file, all this stuff in here. And it also has a file exclusion policy and a diff exclusion policy, which is implemented very similarly, except it's using a git match because it's a Python gem instead of path name on Rails. But just goes through, checks the files, lets you know if they're excluded. And the interesting thing here is that you have to have two different error messages here because you have to tell the user that something happened while it's running the tools. Like you can see right here, we've got files excluded, right? So we got to let the user know what's going on. But we also have to tell the LLM, stop trying to get this file. So you have to tell it, the message I came up with, files excluded due to policy, continue without files. If you don't do this, the AI just keeps trying to find new ways to get the file. Like it'll do, and it'll eventually land on something like, execute bash, do a cat, take the output from the bash command. You know what I mean? Like it'll keep working around your security restrictions. So you have to tell it like, just stop, don't do this. Which is I thought was pretty fun when I was testing it. But yeah, the read file implements this. Read files, uh, write file, list file, all that stuff. We also have the when you're looking for a merge request, it has to go through and parse out the diff, see if the diff actually has any excluded files in it and remove them from the diff, right? Uh, same kind of deal. And the any tool that gets added that touches repository files, like repository files also has this problem. Anything if you're accessing files from the repository, you've got to implement context exclusion. So right now they're taking all of these tools and they're making a lot of them MCP tools and implementing them back in the Rails monolith again. So they're going to implement context exclusion. It's kind of a feature that just kind of touches everything at this point. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all it has. So
Yeah, I just wanted
Nice,
to throw
thanks,
in one
Alan.
extra comment. Is like for a long time, customers have really liked our general data usage policy, which is like we have 0-day data retention. We're not going to use your data for training. Like that resonates. And this is just kind of like that one extra step to make them feel really confident, where you say like you can also completely obviate, those sensitive files. So that was the main motivation, to just really keep a hardened kind of data privacy stance with no kind of qualifying statements around it, and put a little control in the hands of users. But yeah,
because
Alan, great work on this feature, Alan.
I mean, people have worries about like code training and stuff, but you never really know how customers structure their Git repository. And I've definitely worked at companies where there were things checked in that should not be, like a password or something like that, for expediency's sake. And it gives them a little security to know that that's not going to a third party. So,
Yeah, before it was like, trust us, we don't. And I think they do, but you can also say like, hey, if you want to be extra safe, just go configure those files for which you're most sensitive. And
yeah,
you can it's nice to get a feedback that goes like, oh, I'm not going to touch that one. Like, I think that's a confidence booster for the
yeah,
customer.
yeah. It does give them a thing that's like, hey, the
Yeah.
AI cannot read this, because it's hard. Part of AI work is you end up personifying it as like a little guy that's helping you out,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's like, I don't want this, I don't want whatever this thing is to touch this.
Yeah.
Seeing that work is useful. Does anybody have any questions about implementation or anything?
I have two questions actually. So the first one is first of all, yeah, thank you for the demo. This is really helpful. The first one is like, in which scenarios this might be helpful?
So I see it as if you have repositories with red data, right? Like, because sometimes you're going to want to version that, but you don't want it going to the LLM, you know. I think that's a big one. I think if you are at all worried about your code getting trained on, like if you're working on sensitive code, and even though we say we don't do it and we audit and we show that we don't do it, you still want control over that. You know, I see it as like you can turn off Duo at a repository level. This gives you more fine-grained control to turn it off at the file level. Why you would want to turn off Duo is, I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons, but I think ultimately it's just giving the customer control over the data that's most important to them is really what it's about.
Okay. My second question was like, I remember in one of the previous AI engineers all hand, there was like this feature about adding some custom instructions to some file that's going to be provided to the LLM. And I was wondering, why isn't this also part of that? But I think what you answered about the red data answers this question. Like anyone can probably make merge request, change that, remove some files so that so that the LLM eventually gives that data. So yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say that is an important distinction here, LLMs are not deterministic. So chat instructions are telling the chat, please do this. But this forces, like these are handcuffs. You cannot touch this file, right?
Yeah.
Because it's implemented at the deterministic layer of tools that, you know, the LLM called back into to get access to the files in the first place, that means it's enforced.
Okay. Yeah. We need to just reminder for ourselves is to take this into consideration with knowledge graph when we provide the data to be parsed by knowledge graph. Also, not to take this data there as well, like in case like there's some red data as well. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely, knowledge graph is on my list of I filed an issue for it and I'll probably work on it at some point, but kind of letting knowledge graph, there's a lot going on there right now. So
Yeah.
you know, and what's interesting is that like because the tools can't access the files, knowledge graph might have knowledge of the file, the contents of the files, but then it would tell the AI go get the file and it can't. So that it's probably, we definitely need to fix that at some point.
Yeah, but also the message was like this file exists, but I don't have access to it. So maybe it should not be like, it should be something different. Like I don't know if this file exists or not. So to like not to give idea to anyone that this file actually there. So maybe it will give them a hint to go and try to access it some one way or another.
Yeah, so it is interesting because if you try to list the directory output, if the AI tries to list directory output or things like that, it won't show up. If it tries to list repository files, it won't show up. So I think some of that is because I told it specifically the file name. But also, yeah, it is once it goes to try to read the file, we have to say like, hey, you don't get access to this. And so it's kind of a yeah, I'm not sure the way to go on that. I think the important thing is it doesn't get the contents of the file, but if we ever wanted to change that, that would be an interesting thing because you have to tell the LLM like stop, right? Like you don't have permission of this. But if you told it like hey, I try to read readme.md and it's like this file doesn't exist, it's going to go, oh, I must be mistaken. I'm going to try a bunch of different README files, right? So you have to tell it like, this doesn't exist and stop asking questions, which I'm not entirely sure how to get it to do that, but you know,
That's a
maybe
good question. Yeah, I had kind of proposed the current behavior. I mean, maybe we learn, we could tweak it, but I think my belief is like it's more confidence reassuring to the user or customer if it's like GitLab isn't ignorant of the file. It like chose to apply this policy rather than being like, I don't know if that file is there or not. So I think it's a fair question though. We can always tweak it a little bit, but I do think like the feedback loop feels tight right now, where it's like you ask me to do something I can't do, rather than being like I have no idea what you're talking about. So, but it's an interesting observation. Yeah.
Shoulder, do you have the next question?
Yes, thanks for the demo. Looks super cool. I had two questions actually. The first one being, is there a limit to the number of files that one can exclude? And then the second question is, what stops, say like a user to create like a duplicate file of one of the files that's being excluded, and essentially using that for the LLM calls?
So because they're glob patterns, I would say there's not really a limit. I don't even think there's a limit to the number of patterns you can do, but also if you do like star or, star, star, slash star, like you can include everything in the repo forever, right? To the second question, we run into this a lot with the various access management around Duo. And ultimately, because our customers are enterprise, at a certain point, it's their job to manage malicious employees, right? Basically the assumption here is that everyone is professional, and we're trying to prevent you from doing something on accident that you shouldn't. Or in this case, we're trying to make sure the agent doesn't do something you don't want it to do.
Right.
You could always take a file that has sensitive information and write it down on a piece of paper with a pencil.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Scan it back in with your phone and then copy it. You know what I mean? Like there, at a certain point, it's just why is this person doing this? And this is kind of your problem to deal with. You know what I mean? Like we can only do so much. But
Right.
the main thing we are trying to do here is with agentic stuff is that the AI is taking actions on its own, and we need to make sure it has boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think the like common one, I don't know that it's common, easy to do, I think, would be a user who's not an admin goes and tries to invoke this file and it goes, sorry, I can't do that. And they're like, okay, I'll just open the file in my IDE and copy paste the contents. Like it's a pretty easy workaround, but I think I kind of agree with Alan. Like, I don't know how to solve for that. And so like, if you went through the effort to sidestep, like you're taking a little bit of liability on the customer. I hate saying that, but I think it's the reality. I think it's a very fair question. It was like one of the main risks that we like kind of called out when we were speccing this out. So very valid observation. It's more of like a frontline defense, but at some point, yeah, the admin has to kind of manage their team as well.
We have the same thing with turning off Duo at the project level. Like we let people turn off Duo so you can't use Duo on this project, but you can always do git export and take code and then copy it over to something else and then use AI on it. Like
Right.
at a certain point, it's like, hey, this is your customer information. You have to treat this with a little bit of care.
Yeah. Makes sense.
You can only
Thanks.
do much. Kendrick, you got the next?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions like around the implementation. So, like you were talking about the implementation on the AI gateway side. I'm just wondering, like, what if we add like new tools? Like, are we like enforcing this that people have to like like exclude the files? Because like I didn't look at the code properly, but I think we have to like exclude like for like every tool call. Like, is there like any policy or like any like rule or something around that?
I mean, at a certain point, it's just developers have to be aware that this is something that is supported, and if you don't, it's a lot like trying to think, like implementing maybe database stuff, and you got to be aware that like some people have like geo setups and some people have Postgres. Like ultimately, this is just a feature we have to support. like I said, they're currently converting all of the Duo agent tools over to the MCP server built into GitLab. And so I raised an issue like, hey, this is a feature that's in beta. You guys have to support this. And they're like, okay, yeah, well, you know. So I think basically the answer to that is if you notice something where somebody didn't do it, file an issue and say, hey, you should probably do this. And, you know, it's not a huge burden to support really for a single tool now that all the framework's there. So
Yeah, makes sense. And another question is like, where are we actually like storing these like patterns? Like, I'm guessing they're like at like project level.
yeah, that is a good question. It is project settings. I should have had this pulled up. Let me see. Project settings. Yeah. No, that's not it. It is called Duo Context Exclusion settings. It is a JSON blob. Yeah. Well, that's not it. That is the GraphQL interface. Project. Delegated to project settings. Yeah. So anyway, it is a JSON field on the project settings.
Okay, I think that answers my question.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't think it'd be this hard.
Yeah,
Here we
thank
go. Yeah. So it has it's a JSON schema and it has you know, it just
okay.
has a exclusion rules properties strings. That's it.
Yeah, thanks. Good demo.
Wanderson, did you have a question or?
I had, but you kind of answered it already. I was going to ask about like any other, like we have the run command too. I guess that too can be used to circumvent some of these context exclusions if someone wants to. But as you said, like it's ultimately up to them. Like they can just copy the content of the file and send to do. There's nothing really we can do about it. But I have one other question, if you don't mind. Have we done any testing around like prompt injection in terms of if someone creates a prompt in Duo, trying to, you know, trying to include this in a certain way that the AI will, in the end, actually go there and find the file if possible?
So
Or that's not possible.
yeah, that's why it's nice to implement it at the tool level, is because the AI can request the tool, but the tool will always say no. So as long as we have Duo Context Exclusion implemented in our tools for our agentic chat, it'll be fine. And we don't, and to be clear, we don't support classic chat with this because we're not adding new features to classic chat. But so if the agent tries to use any tool that accesses a file, regardless of why what the prompt has tricked them into doing it, it doesn't really affect anything because it's physically prevented from accessing the tool, which is a lot better than the trying to give it instructions and prompt engineer it into a compliance.
Okay, cool.
All right, I think we are at time.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Alan. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. The next one of these is next week, and we'll talk about evaluation data sets and LangChain and MCP. So tune in for that. And if you have an idea for a topic, yeah, just let me know and we'll get it scheduled. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.